This is a story that pops back up in my mind from time to time. I've only told it to a few people, but I definitely feel like it deserves its place in here. It's for sure one of the scariest moments I've ever had as a child. Back when I was around 10 years old, my mom finally decided that it was time for her to get her driver's license. When she began taking lessons, she was struggling a lot. For this reason, my dad decided that he wanted to do some practice with her besides the official driving lessons with her instructor, just to make sure that she'd pass the upcoming test first try. My little brother and I were attending swimming lessons at a nearby university at this time. Near the university was a small forested area, and behind that was a huge student parking area surrounded by trees, which turned out to be basically empty every weekend. My dad saw an opportunity to take my mom there to drive around for a bit, and brought my little brother and I with them since we were too young to stay home alone. When we arrived at the parking lot later on in the evening, my parents began their practice. My little brother and I quickly got bored and asked if we could go to a small grassy field on the side of the parking lot to play some football. We had brought a football with us. My parents let us, since they'd be able to keep their eyes on us while driving around. After playing for some time, my parents ended up driving around in the other end of the parking lot, approximately 300 to 400 meters away from my brother and I. We were playing right next to the entrance/exit of the parking lot, when suddenly a white Toyota pulled in. The car turned around and stopped on my right side with the vehicle facing the exit. The driver rolled down his window and presented himself as Thomas. He looked friendly, was good-looking and young, I assume around 30 years old. This is where things started to get weird. On the passenger seat was a woman covering her face with a newspaper. All I could see of her was long, blonde hair. On the back seat was a baby sat in a baby chair. Thomas immediately stated that he was from the police, and that we had to get in the car immediately, as he had to talk to us. My brother actually took a couple of steps towards the vehicle, but I stuck my arm in front of his chest to block him, as I was sensing something was off. The woman was still covering her face at this point, not saying a word. Thomas then raised his voice and demanded that we get in the car, or else he would come out and get us. My brother and I froze out of fear. Suddenly, the woman put down the newspaper, showed her face, and told us in a very calm, motherly voice to just listen to the man. The woman looked young, pretty, and like a person who wouldn't hurt a fly. At this moment, I began screaming as loud as I could. Unbeknownst to me, my dad was already running as fast as he could in our direction. He was coming from behind the vehicle, so we didn't see him. My parents didn't have time to drive to us, since the road down the parking lot was very twisty. When my dad heard my screams, he started yelling as loud as he could. "Hey! Who are you? Get away from my children!" As soon as Thomas heard my dad and realized my brother and I weren't alone, he threw his car into gear and took off as fast as he could. My dad was furious, and told my brother and I to hurry up back to the car. He didn't even think about calling the police at that point. He wanted to beat the guy up himself. That resulted in us driving around for the next hour trying to find him, before my dad cooled down and decided that he should probably just call the police instead. We never found out who those people were, but this episode taught me to never judge a book by its cover. People can be the most friendly-looking people in the world, and still wish evil upon you or the ones you love. I'm not sure what those people would have done to us, but I am sure about one thing. They definitely weren't from the police. For context, I'm from a small town that houses 3 different elementary schools, and only one middle school and high school, connected by the gymnasium and a tunnel between the 2 buildings. I had lived there my entire life, and I went to a different school than most other people mentioned in this story. Back when I was in middle school, I had a litany of bullies who loved making every moment of my day a living hell. They did pretty much everything you could think of, ranging from pranks in the middle of class to downright physical assault. But all of them were nothing compared to this one girl I met at the beginning of 7th grade, whom we're going to call Sadie. Sadie was a stereotypical mean girl in every sense of the word. Loved fashion, had a gaggle of friends willing to do her bidding, and every guy was into her, or wanted her. She was the kid with the highest amounts of detentions, argued a lot with the teachers, and the principal pretty much did nothing about her actions. She also made a habit of having fun with some specific kids, including myself. I was a plus-sized kid, a scaredy cat, gullible, and a bit of a pushover, but I did try to do well in school and kept to myself. That didn't do much, however. As soon as Sadie took notice of me, she took it upon herself to make sure every time we even saw each other, she'd make me miserable. At the beginning, it wasn't anything much. She started rumors about me, talked crap about me at school and online. I didn't have social media yet, so I didn't find that out until later, and threw things at me, ranging from her garbage to one of her textbooks. Again, it wasn't terrible at first. Sadie was annoying, sure, but I had workarounds, so I just ignored her. But when other kids saw that I wasn't going to fight back, they joined in and took things way too far. Almost daily, I had been chased around in the hallways, ganged up on in the bathrooms, had my food stolen, gotten blamed by the teachers for their dumb actions in class, and many other things. These kids had me on edge and feeling practically worthless for the entire school year, to the point of me considering just running away to avoid the hell of going back to school. Now, you may be asking, why didn't I tell the school? Well, I tried. Dozens of times. Teachers, guidance counselors, even the principal. But they didn't care. The school was honestly not the best, and they were pretty negligent to everything that didn't involve funds, sports events, and GPA for the year. So they gave no heed to me when I tried to tell them what was going on with Sadie and her lackeys. These are some of their real responses from incidents that happened. Example 1. When I had gotten my backpack thrown down the stairs, and a calculator inside that I had brought from home got broken. It's your property, your problem. Example 2. When Sadie had written a fat joke alongside a slur on my locker door in permanent marker. You have no evidence that it was her. Example 3. When Sadie's boy toy and his friends cornered me outside the changing rooms for gym to ask me for something. They were probably just kidding around. All of these incidents, and more, were spearheaded by Sadie, who was practically in charge that year, and nothing she did was getting her in trouble. Summer could not come fast enough that year. By the time 7th grade was over, they let those kids get away with so much, I honestly gave up on trying to get outside help at that point. As I got some personal help that summer, I decided that things would be different by the time I had to go back to school the following year. I was not going to be Sadie's personal punching bag anymore. When 8th grade started up, I was ready. I learned MMA self-defense, I defended myself vocally, I wasn't so quiet anymore, and I fought back. And it worked. None of the old bullies from last year even looked my way again. Except for Sadie, who still tried to pull her usual stunts. But the longer I showed her I didn't care, the more it angered her. Honestly, it felt like ample revenge to all the crap she put me through the previous year. Sadie, however, would not let it go for the life of her. I didn't know it then, but this whole act of hers would end up taking a bad turn. One day, I was walking to the gym, with Sadie following close behind me. She didn't share a gym class with me, but she did like following me around in between classes, and trying to get a rise out of me. This day, however, was not great for me. I don't exactly remember why now, but I was stressed out, and I kept getting angry over whatever went wrong that day. Sadie, following behind me, trying out different insults and comments about me, sent me over the edge. In a quick motion, I stopped walking, spun around, pushed Sadie backwards, and spit towards her, with it landing on her leg. I told her to just buzz off and leave me alone. I didn't know what I was really expecting her reaction to be, but it sure as hell wasn't what she did. Sadie just stood there, frozen, staring at me. I expected her to be coughing up blood from rage, or screaming, or anything at all. But she just stood there, like a deer in the headlights. I didn't think about it at the time, as I left for gym class not long after, and eventually forgot about it. After school, I was walking across the school building to head for the parking lot next to the high school building where I was to catch the bus. Everything felt normal, until I saw Sadie not far behind me. I didn't think anything weird of it, so I ignored it and kept walking. Until I noticed she was taking the same path I was to the buses. This wouldn't be odd, if she actually rode the buses at all. Sadie walked to and from school every single day. If not that, someone would come pick her up. But the carpool lot was in the opposite direction of the buses. I took a different path than my normal route, around the back of the school. I looked back to check, and yep, Sadie was taking the exact same path I was, and she stopped walking every time I looked back at her. I began picking up the pace a little bit, and from behind me, I could hear her running to catch up. By the time I was nearing the bus lot, she was somewhere around 10 feet right behind me, still jogging to follow me. I definitely did not want her to learn which bus was mine, nor did I want her to follow me home. So I decided to fake her out. I jumped onto a different bus, much to the dismay of the driver, and Sadie ran in after me. After she got in front of the bus driver to yell at her about something, I ran off and raced to my actual bus, which was all the way on the other end of the lot from where this particular bus was. I got in, and the bus drove away just as Sadie got off to see where I went. The next day, I didn't see Sadie anywhere at school. Not in any of the classes, not at lunch, not even after school either. I asked around, but nobody knew where she went. This went on for the rest of the week. The bus incident took place on a Monday, and the disappearing act happened on Tuesday. By Thursday, I began to relax about the whole thing. I still didn't understand what Sadie was doing with the whole bus incident, but as long as she was gone, things felt okay. Until Friday afternoon came along. Like the last few days, Sadie wasn't there, so I was pretty relaxed for most of it. When the end of the school day came, I was about to walk out the front doors of the building, when something stopped me. I had a horrible feeling in my stomach, telling me not to go outside. I had no idea where that came from, but I thought it was just my leftover anxiety playing tricks on me. So I headed out anyway, not still twisting. The middle school and high school were all a part of one connecting path system, which means we all had hallways and walkways connecting both the main middle school and the main high school buildings, with one long sidewalk path out front. The parking lot where I had to walk to my bus was on the opposite end of this long sidewalk, which ran in front of both the middle school and the high school. This can make for a pretty long walk, and the doors leading into the high school, often flooded with students, make for some interesting obstacles. This would all come into play when this happened. I had just walked down the outside stairs to the sidewalk, when I saw someone sprinting around a corner from the building. I looked over and it was Sadie, looking as mad as a rabid dog, full on sprinting right towards me. I bolted, running faster than I ever had in my whole life, running off of nothing but pure adrenaline and fear. Sadie was catching up quickly behind me, and all I could do was run and pray for help. I dodged between crowds of kids and just tried to lose her somewhere in the masses. I didn't care if I bumped into people, only afraid that Sadie was still behind me. By the time I reached the buses, I didn't see her anywhere, so I stopped and nearly collapsed to catch my breath. I felt relief for only a second, until she popped out of nowhere from the side of the crowd and lunged at me. Sadie grabbed me by the hair and backpack, swinging me around in a circle as I tried to get her off of me. She kept pulling and jerking so much, I felt my hair being ripped at some points, but she kept going. I screamed for help, kicking and punching blindly in Sadie's direction, but either nobody wanted to get involved or were too scared to break us up, because nobody came forward. Sadie let go of my hair to reach for something behind her, and what happened next was only a miracle. My older brother was walking out of the high school drinking a soda when he saw the scene and ran to help. He was the only one who knew about Sadie and recognized her when we had gotten to school in the mornings. He threw his soda at Sadie's head, which startled her enough to let me go and drop whatever she was holding. I grabbed my brother and we took off for the bus, making it just before it drove off. After we found a seat, I looked back outside, and what I saw still gives me chills. Sadie was on the ground, arms pinned by a teacher, and right on the ground next to her was an open hunting knife. I knew without a doubt that it was hers, because of the sound I heard when she dropped it earlier. The next Monday, I got called down to the office, where my brother was also waiting. We got pulled into the counselor's office, where there were 2 police officers waiting. Apparently, after we ran, a high school teacher saw Sadie picking up the weapon and apprehended her, while another person called the police. They got Sadie into interrogation, and now they needed to hear what happened from me. I practically broke down right then and there and told them everything. What Sadie did to me last year, what I almost did because of her torment, the bus incident the week prior, and what happened on the sidewalk. My brother put his arm around me while I just sat there, nearly sobbing my words out. The police and the counselor just sat there, writing down what I said, but they looked on sympathetically. One of the officers asked me if I would like to tell my parents so they could press charges. At this point, I just wanted everything about this horrible situation to end, so I just told them to do whatever they wanted. I just wanted this to stop. The counselor could tell that I was already upset enough, so he sent me back to class, and my brother and I made a promise to never speak of this again. Sadie ended up getting into juvie for the rest of the school year, all the way until halfway through the 2nd semester of 9th grade. The school also had some changes to it too. Police officers were now on duty during school hours in the middle and high schools. We had stricter policies with bullying, and kids could now stay with teachers before, during, and after school if they needed to. I never saw Sadie again after that, not even in passing. I later learned from one of her old friends that after senior year, she dropped out to get her GED because the incident on her police record meant college was impossible. It's been over 9 years since that day on the sidewalk. I'll admit, this is honestly not as bad as what other kids probably had to go through, but I still feel the trauma from that time in middle school, and especially from what Sadie did to me. After middle school, I had developed depression, severe social anxiety, and PTSD from the bullies. I can't fully blame the situation for everything, as maybe if I pushed a bit harder with the teachers and the principal, maybe this wouldn't have happened in the first place. But eventually, things did end up getting better. I just wish I could go back to my 13-year-old self that had to endure all of that to say that everything was going to be okay in the end. I am doing better now, and am looking into therapy. I'm in university right now, and I cannot be prouder of how far I've come. So, to the psychopath of a bully that tormented me all those years ago and almost stabbed me, let's not meet again. I started this back in September last year, but never got around to sharing it. I am now, due to an uncomfortable situation that happened recently. Let me start off by saying that I live in an apartment complex by a golf course/country club on the edge of town. Since not many people live in this area, it can get pretty quiet at night. The complex is built partially into a small hill at the end of a road, with my apartment being on the back corner of the building on the ground floor. So, the bottom of the windows in the living room and both bedrooms start literally a few inches above the ground outside. There is also a trail behind my apartment building that goes through a small patch of woods. I don't have much of a view, since my living room windows face a good 15 to 20 foot patch of grass. Past that is a tree line that separates me from a few houses on the next street over. This story has been ongoing for the last couple of months, and I'm not entirely sure if this is just paranoia or coincidental. Last summer, a family moved into a house on the next street over, a couple of houses down from my apartment. I've only seen one middle-aged man and a dog so far. I was taking my Shih Tzu, Harley, outside one day, and the man was out in his backyard, just standing, with his arms crossed, swaying side to side. He almost looked like an NPC character from an early 2000s video game, waiting to be interacted with. The dumpster shed area is in view of his backyard. We made eye contact, so I awkwardly waved and then just looked at my phone while Harley did her business. But I could tell from my peripheral vision that he didn't look away from us. We have the same breed of dog, so I just assumed that he was probably thinking of letting them meet sometime, but I wondered why he didn't have his dog outside with him. I just went back inside quickly after Harley was done. My younger brother lives in the same complex as I do, but on the second floor. He told me that every now and then he would see that man take his dog out into his backyard, but then cross the tree line into the complex's yard. He would circle the building slowly, a little too close to the building for comfort, before going back to his house. In September of last year, I split up with my boyfriend at the time. The night I told him to leave, I went to a friend's house to vent. I didn't want to leave Harley home alone for too long, so after about an hour or so, I came back to my apartment. I knocked out on one of the two couches in the living room, while I had a black screen rain sound video playing on YouTube. I woke up at around 2 in the morning to Harley going crazy, barking and growling. The other couch is right under the main window in my living room. Harley had climbed up the couch and was barking at the window between the curtains. I got up to get her down and be quiet, when my stomach dropped as I realized something. The curtains are on the thinner side, and I can normally faintly see the streetlights from the next street over through the curtains. I started getting a little nervous, realizing that there was a black mass blocking some of the lights above where Harley was standing. I grabbed the remote control to shut the TV off while I was getting closer to the window. The TV turns off in the style of retro TVs, where the picture closes in on itself. When I turned it off, the flash animation on the TV illuminated the room briefly. It was enough that I was able to make out the form of someone dressed in black or otherwise dark clothes, crouched down looking into my window. In the flash, they probably saw me too, because they ran away quickly. I picked up Harley and ran to the kitchen to grab a knife, and went to my room, locking the door. I texted my ex, asking him if he was outside of the window just then. He replied back no, and asked what was happening. I didn't believe him, because he's never awake that late, and told him I was about to call the police, so to just tell me the truth. He told me that I should call them either way, and sent me his live location, showing that he was at his friend's house over an hour away. I called the police, and let them know that I had seen someone outside my window. They came and looked around, finding nothing, obviously. An officer told me that they would keep someone in the area, so to just call back if anything else happened. Over the next couple of weeks, around 2 or 3 in the morning each night, Harley would freak out at the window. By the time I'd get to her, I couldn't see anyone outside. Fast forward to May of 2024. This past week, I went through my storage closet and found some of my ex's things. I was out with some friends when he came to pick them up. He ended up texting me to come home so that we could talk about something important. I got home, and I noticed that he has a puzzled look on his face. I asked him what the problem was, and he told me that while he was loading his stuff into his truck, he quickly took Harley out so she could do her business. He was then approached by an older lady that lives on the second floor. For context, the dumpster is at the end of the parking lot, and if you turn right, you'll face the side of the building in the general area outside my living room window. There are a few big trees that keep the area back there pretty dark. Even during the summer months, it's deeply shaded. The older lady said that as she was taking her trash out, she heard a twig snap and looked in the direction it came from. She said that she saw a man outside my window. Not just walking around, he was up close, peering into my living room. One hand up on the window, trying to block the light so he could see, and his phone in the other hand, pointing inside my apartment. She yelled out, asking him what the hell he was doing, but he just acted like he didn't hear her and walked away slowly in the opposite direction. She said it would be one thing if he was just walking through the yard and glanced over at my window, but he was full-on pressing his face against the glass, looking in. My blood ran cold, and I got goosebumps. I have since bought a Ring camera, which is something I should have done a long time ago. I'll update if anything else happens. What's up, everybody? Lone Wolf here. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to these 3 true scary stories from Reddit. These Reddit posts will of course be linked in the description below for anybody else who wants to read them. Anyways, if you guys enjoyed the video, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, turn on the bell for notifications so you don't miss a new video. If anybody has any personal stories or story recommendations for me, or any advice to help improve the channel, there will be links to all of my social media platforms in the description. I'm mostly active on Twitter and on Instagram, but I also have an email, a Discord server, and a TikTok account that you can message me on as well. Until next time, stay spooky. And remember,
the hunt begins when the moon is full.